Hi, I'm Andrew Berry and welcome to At The Bench, and welcome to a film that's been requested by an At The Bench member. I had an email a week or so ago from an At The Bench member asking if I can help her basically choose a scales for her. She said that the tool catalogues were full of different types of weighing scales, different colours, different shapes, different prices, different amounts that they weigh. And can I just basically produce a film for her and At The Bench members, just to try and explain what the scales do, what they can be used for legally and so forth. So I asked the boys up in Sutton Tools to send me down a whole load of scales, and I've got I've got 5 different types of scales here, and it's with these scales that I'm going to hopefully show you what the scales do, and hopefully enable you to have a bit more of an educated buy next time you want to buy a set of scales. The majority of scales that you can buy now are basically similar to these here, and they are little pocket scales. The majority of the suppliers now are Tanita, there's Tangent ones here, and they are very, very good. They say that they are professional. These couple here, they say digital scales professional. I do have a problem with that word professional. The main reason is if you are using scales within your business that you use to price your work, for instance, if you were like a chain supplier selling gold chain or silver chain, and you sold to the public the chain that is based upon the weight of the item, these scales are no good for you. Despite them saying professional, they are not necessarily the right scales for you. If you are buying in scrap gold, and at the moment everybody seems to be buying in scrap gold, if you buy in scrap gold and the price that you give the customer is based upon the weight of that article, these scales are no good. You have to have a set of scales that are trading standards and government approved. I've got a set of scales here that we have bought and we've had to buy because we do buy in gold off the general public. And it is with these scales now that we can legally buy in gold. They are approved by trading standards. Upon the back of here, we got the metal seal here to show that these scales have not been tampered with. For instance, if trading standards came round to your place of business and they said to me, do you buy in scrap gold? If I said yes, they'll say, well, can you show us the scales? If you buy it in by the gram, you have to have a set of approved scales. If I simply had basically a set of these scales, well then I'm likely to be fined because these are not approved, not government or trading standards approved. I have had to buy a set of scales that look like this. The scales are approved is they have the stamp on the back here, and I can legally use these scales to conduct my business if I'm selling items by the gram, weight-wise, money-wise, and also buying in scrap. And it's a mains powered, so you have to plug it into the mains. We've got a little spirit level here. We have to ensure that these scales are level, and we can basically use the scales. We turn them on, and this weighs down to, if it warms up, it weighs down to 1/100th of a gram. They are that accurate. And because these are government approved and trading standards approved scales and they weigh down to 1/100th of a gram, they are expensive. They are about 5 times, 6 times the cost of these scales because they are approved to be used. But I'll come back to those scales a little bit later. As I say, these, I'll show you basically what they're all about. They're all pocket, and they all come with a nice faux leather sleeve. And they look something similar to that there. Obviously then, to protect your scales, they go in the little sleeve like that. These scales are made by Tanita. They weigh a maximum of 120 grams. And they will weigh as accurate as down to 1/10th of a gram. The controls are really, really simple. We have the LCD display here. We've got the scales, the weigh-in part here, and it's got slightly dimpled there. 2 controls, on and off. Push the on button, the 8888 comes up and shows that the machine is starting up, and it is ready now to weigh once you see the 00 here. You then would put your item onto the scales. For instance, I got a thumb drive here. You put that thumb drive onto there and it weighs here, and that thumb drive weighs 9.5 grams. You've also got on the on button here a tare, which means that perhaps if you had a little tray that you wanted to put on there, that you were putting perhaps some gold on it or whatever it was you were weighing, you would put the tray onto the scales first. You would then tare the weight, which means that the scales would recalculate and recalibrate with that weight on it. They would then show 0. Then you can put your items onto that scales. I know then that the weight showing is the weight of the gold or whatever you're putting on, and not including the little tray that is on it. Nice little set. It's got 3 batteries here in the back as well, little button cell batteries, watch batteries here, and these batteries are going to last you for months and months and months. Very good, very cheap set of scales. The other scales that I got here will weigh a little bit heavier, maximum of 120 on those. These particular scales here weigh a maximum of 300. It has a little protective cover on this one here, and that can be used as a little tray if you wanted to put some loose beads on it or whatever that would not necessarily stay on the tray there. Now this scale is a little bit more complicated and it is a little bit more expensive. Again, we've got 2 buttons down here, an on and an off. So we can simply turn it on, the 8888 comes up, the scale is calibrating itself, and when it's ready, the 0.0 comes up, and also a little circle comes up in the display which shows that the scale is just ready to be weighed. Now these scales will weigh in grams as the other scales did, but also the scales will weigh in ounces, ounce troys and pennyweight. Pennyweight we don't often use in this country. That's normally associated with perhaps I think it's America. Ounces and ounce troys, well then yes, we do use that. So these scales can also be used for weighing other items if you wanted to weigh in ounces. And those are accessed by pressing the mode button down here. That goes from grams to ounces to ounce troy and then pennyweights. And push it again and it comes back to grams. So those scales weigh up to 300 grams. Another set of scales that we have here are made by a company called Tangent. These are available to weigh 200 grams and another one in 300 grams. And these are a little bit more of a trendier scales, like a flip top phone. A lot smaller, obviously. We got here, the area that we've got here is the weighing area, and again we have the buttons down the bottom here. We've got the calibrate, the mode and the on off and the tare button. So we can push the on off button, again the 8888 comes up. It's ready to be used now as the scales. We have the little circle here which shows that the scales are just right and ready. Like the other scales, we can weigh in grams, ounces, ounce troys and pennyweights. These particular scales, they're silver, so those silver scales are going to weigh a maximum of 300 grams. They're also available in black, like a black covering as well, and those then will be able to weigh 200 grams. And they all weigh down to 1/10 of a gram. The calibrate button here is to be able to calibrate the scales. You should really calibrate the scales whenever you turn them on, just to make sure that the accuracy is just right. There are various ways that the scales can do it. I have some other scales down here that I'll show you in a second with a little weight. There's an exact amount that you would use to calibrate. These scales don't have that weight, but there's a little push button here that you can push and it'll calibrate to make sure that the accuracy is as best possible. Again, a very compact, very smart set of scales. Limited because of the size of the weighing area as well, but if you've only got some small items to weigh, well that's fine. And they also come with an instruction booklet as well. And likewise with this one here, that's exactly the same, but that is available in the black cover.